This video is going to talk a little bit about research designs. So let's flip back a couple pages to the marketing research process that we went over last time. So remember what the basic process is. It starts by defining the problem. So problem defining the problem really amounts for you identifying, what decision are you trying to make, and then what information do you need to help you make that decision. So once you've figured out, here's the information I need to make my decision. The next step is to choose a general research approach. So there are three main approaches: exploratory, descriptive, and causal. So we're going to talk a little bit more about these three general approaches today. And these approaches lead to very different methods. So if you kind of know which type to go for, that'll guide you in choosing the method, and then also in selecting a marketing research vendor. So certain vendors would specialize in exploratory research, whereas different ones will specialize in descriptive and causal research. So what is a research design? So a research design is just the detailed blueprint that's going to guide how you're going to do your research. So just like a blueprint from a house is going to tell you where all the walls are and how they relate to each other, the research design is going to specify, here's all the structures that are going to make up the study that you're going to do to answer those questions that you have. Now, the three types of designs are exploratory, descriptive, and causal. So exploratory research is used whenever you're just trying to get ideas and insights. You're not at the stage yet where you have a hypothesis, a definite hypothesis. You're still in the exploratory phase where you're trying to come up with a meaningful hypothesis to test. So I give a little example on this page where, if a beer manufacturer notices that the sales have decreased, this beer manufacturer has no idea why sales have decreased. There could be any number of reasons why their sales have decreased. It's like there's a symptom. You go to the doctor, you're not feeling well, but any number of things could be causing that sickness. So sales have gone down. Why is that? So if you think about it, any number of things could happen. Maybe it's a distribution problem. Maybe you're not in the right stores. Perhaps it's a promotion problem. So maybe your in-store promotion is bad, or maybe your advertising is bad. There could be external macro factors like cultural things where the world is moving away from beer and moving to wine coolers. Okay, so that could also explain why your sales are down. It could be, your positioning is just too old-fashioned. You're just the beer for yesterday, not the beer for today, which is going to correspond to an advertising problem. Okay, so the point is there's a lot of different things that could explain this symptom of decreased sales. And if you're going to treat that symptom, you have to make sure you're treating the root cause. And so jumping to something else, like let's try positioning A or positioning B, might be premature when the problem could be your competitor or it could be your distribution. In that case, positioning is not necessarily going to help you. All right, so if you're in that situation, what you'd want to do is first do some exploratory research. Read the trade pubs. Find out what the trends are. Are everybody's sales down? Talk to your distributor. Talk to your, maybe talk to some store managers to try to gain some insights. So again, we're trying to gain some insights so that we have a hypothesis that we can actually test with more formal research methods. Okay, so that's exploratory research. Descriptive research is characterized by one key word. And that key word is measurement. So we use descriptive designs when we want to measure some quantity. So it should be mentioned that if you're going to measure something, you're pretty far along in terms of having some pretty well-defined research objectives. Okay, so the example I give here is perhaps this beer company wants to investigate trends in the consumption of its beer with respect to characteristics such as age, sex, occupation, and so forth. So this actually happened to a beer called Pabst Blue Ribbon a few years ago. So Pabst Blue Ribbon used to be a premium beer, but as imports invaded the U.S., it lost its premium status and it was sold off to many breweries, and eventually it became a cash cow that the brewers were just not investing in at all. They'd stopped advertising it and were just selling it for whatever they could get. Then all of a sudden, sales increased. So why are the sales increasing? The first question the brewery had is who's responsible for this? Who's buying this? So they'd want to do a descriptive study to measure what demographic groups are responsible for this increase in sales. And it turned out it was bikers, people who deliver deliver things on bicycles in New York, made it a very trendy beer among young people. So young people, and eventually took off on college campuses. So it was cheap beer that you could drink. And so the point with all this is, you need a descriptive study to measure specifically which demographic groups are responsible for this increase in sales. So you have some pretty specific questions. I want to know their age, I want to know their sex, I want to know their occupation, and I've got a pretty well-defined universe. Causal research is characterized by trying to get at cause and effect. So if I do something, what happens? That's the central question that causal research is trying to address. So if I change my price, what's going to happen to sales? If I change the positioning of my product, what's going to happen to sales? If I advertise more, what's going to happen to sales? So these are all cause and effect questions. So the example I give here is that perhaps the management of this brewer wants to understand how people are going to react to certain promotional plans. So they've already done a whole lot of other research into what sort of promotions might motivate people to buy the beer, and maybe they've come up with a couple different promotional plans. Now what they need to do is test it. And so usually the methods that you use to get at this would be some sort of an experiment where you select certain stores and run one promotion there, and in different stores you run a different promotion, and then you compare the sales of them. Okay, so these are the three basic designs. What I'd like for you to do now is to try your hand at these three problems. So the question is, which research design would you recommend for each of these three situations? So why don't you pause the video and try this on your own. Okay, the answers are provided in the footnote below, and I'll just go over one thing. In question 2, you want to ascertain the demographic composition of customers and their perceptions about the bank's strengths and weaknesses. So you have a pretty well-defined population. You want to measure demographic characteristics. Okay, so whenever you say descriptive research, you should have a good answer to this question. What are you going to measure? Well, I'm going to measure demographics. I'm also going to measure perceptions, but now perceptions are where things get kind of tricky. So what are the perceptions you're going to measure? And you may not know what perceptions to measure. You may not, you could take a stab at this if you work at the bank and say, I'm going to measure the perception that we're very friendly, or that we're, we have the hardest working bankers, or the most convenient ATMs. And, we might have these beliefs that those are things that that's why customers like us. But that doesn't mean that that's true. So to get at these perceptions, you might want to use a little bit of exploratory research and do some in-depth interviews, do some focus groups of consumers, and listen to them. You might want to go onto social media and read what people are saying about you. These would all be forms of exploratory research that would then help you craft the questions that go on a descriptive survey. So a little bit of exploratory up front before you do the descriptive is probably called for. So here's a typical flow diagram, and it kind of flows from that discussion I just had of the second question. So the first question you want to ask yourself when choosing a research design is whether the goals and the questions, the research questions, are really clear. So if they're not really focused, you're going to need to do some exploratory research. And after you've done that, sometimes that feeds back into a descriptive or causal study. If they are pretty clear, so my sales are up and I want to know who's drinking my beer, then you can go straight to a descriptive study. Along this path, you want to ask yourself, does the purpose call for measuring cause and effect? And if that's the case, you're going to need a causal design, otherwise you'll just do some descriptive. One other point that often confuses students is that causal designs often involve a descriptive component. So if you go back to this example where I'm measuring customer satisfaction according to two different sales compensation plans, well, measuring customer satisfaction is a descriptive task. Okay, so embedded in this causal design is a descriptive task. So these things kind of blend together. Let's talk a little bit more about these specific designs. Now, exploratory research really isn't the focus of this course. Your consumer behavior course, customer insight class, will teach you a lot more of the methods for doing exploratory research. The methods that are commonly associated with this, though, are things like doing a literature search. So reading the newspaper. It's amazing what you'll learn just by reading the business page, or the style page for that matter, of the newspaper. Help you keep up on trends, keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in culture today. Even going to movies will help you keep up on what's going on in culture today. Some more marketing researchy methods for doing exploratory research include in-depth interviews, or IDIs, and focus groups. You'll learn about both these methods in your customer insight class. So in-depth interviews are where you sit down with a person for an extended period of time, maybe an hour, and you just have a discussion with them. And you're usually sitting in a room with a one-way mirror, and it's being videoed, and the audio is captured. And you have a professional moderator doing the discussion. And you usually prepare a discussion guide ahead of time. Focus groups are a little bit different. So focus groups, you can click on the link here and get the Wikipedia page on them. Usually involve a group of about 8 to 12 people in a room, and you have a moderator who's leading a discussion about your brand, or maybe a new product that you're considering launching, whatever the stimuli is. You can also do ethnographies and ethnographies, where you go out online, see what people are saying about you. You can observe people. So these are all examples of exploratory research methods. Much of the focus of this class is going to be on the second class of research designs, descriptive research. In addition to this, the third class, causal designs, will often have a descriptive component. So when we're doing an experiment where we want to establish cause and effect, we're going to be using descriptive techniques to measure both our independent and our dependent variables in that experiment. So remember what I said about descriptive research. The thing that characterizes it is the need to measure something. We're trying to describe something, and we're going to describe that by measuring it. Take various measurements on it to characterize the thing that we're describing. Now, when we're doing descriptive research, we need a very clear specification of the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So the who just means which specific group are we trying to measure. So this will correspond often with our target segment. So if we are targeting women between the ages of 25 and 40, and we want to measure their attitudes and beliefs about our product category, then the who of our study is going to be women between the ages of 25 and 40. So we don't care about men, we don't care about women outside that demographic range. So we need to clearly specify exactly who we want to study in our study. Next, we need a very specific characterization of what we're going to measure. So what specific attributes, what specific beliefs, what specific attitudes are we trying to measure about this group. Then we also have to specify all the other details of our research design. So when are we going to do it? Where? How are we going to execute this? So how meaning, is this going to be a mail survey? Will this be a phone survey, an internet survey? How are we going to recruit subjects, and so forth? So all those details of the sampling plan must be specified with descriptive research. Finally, why are we doing this, which links back to the objectives. Now, there are two broad classes of descriptive designs, and you should really know both of these terms. So the two broad classes are cross-sectional and longitudinal. So cross-sectional designs are where we take a single measurement at a point in time and we're done. So I may want to know people's beliefs about cream cheese as of right now, and so I field a survey, I measure their beliefs, and I'm done. So that's a cross-sectional design. Longitudinal designs involve multiple measurements over time. So the classic example of a longitudinal design would be something like a medical study. So I was involved in a clinical trial a few years ago for cholesterol medication. And so what happened was I went into a doctor's office and they measured my cholesterol, they measured my other vital signs like the blood pressure and weight and all that. Then they put me on some medication. I'm not quite sure what it was. It could have been a placebo, which is just an inert substance. It could have been a small dose of the cholesterol medicine. It could have been a high dose of the cholesterol medicine. Next, I came back a week later, and after taking the medication, they measured my cholesterol, drew some blood, measured my blood pressure and all that. Then a week later, we did the same. All right, so this happened over about a 10-week period. So my point with this is that they're taking multiple measures over time. And so that makes this a longitudinal design. I was part of a panel. Panel's more of a marketing research term, but just a panel is a group of people on whom you are gathering measurements over time. Now, within panels, there are two types of panels. There are true panels, and there are also omnibus panels. So a true panel is where you measure the same thing at every point in time. An omnibus panel is a panel where you gather different information at different points in time. There are many organizations that maintain omnibus panels, and these omnibus panels are frequently used by market researchers. So a company who needs some information would go to one of these companies and have them field a survey. So one such company is Ipsos. Another one is NFO. And so what these companies do is they maintain a large group of people who are willing to take surveys. That's the way I describe it. And so if I have, let's say I'm at a consumer packaged good company and I have an idea for a new product and I want to run a quick concept test on this, what I do then is go to Ipsos or NFO or ComScore, another company that has such a panel, and I would pay them to have access to their panel. And then they would field the survey for me, and I would have the information in a short period of time. So I could have a description of that concept and then get some measures of interest and so forth. Let me now give you an example of a study that I worked on a few years ago that makes use of both an omnibus and a true panel. So a few years ago I was involved in a project to market hearing aids. And hearing aids are a notoriously difficult product to market because you don't want to wear one. You know, people claim that if you wear a hearing aid, it makes them look old and feeble, and it's just not something you want to do, even though maybe you need it. So hearing aids are much harder to market than something like Coke. I mean, everybody wants a Coke, but when it comes to a hearing aid, few people really want to get one. It's more like they have to get one. So we were trying to come up with ways of creating advertising messages and IMC messages, so integrated marketing messages across different channels that would change people's belief and ultimately move them towards the purchase of a hearing aid. Now our target audience in this group was hearing impaired people who do not currently have a hearing aid. So that was the definition of the who, if you will. So we cared about hearing impaired adults who don't have a hearing aid. So if we want to test some marketing communications that are designed to change attitudes towards hearing aids on this population, we need to find some members of this population. Where are you going to find members of the general public who have hearing impairment but don't have a hearing aid? And it's not exactly an easy task. So what we ended up doing was going to one of these omnibus panels, one of the companies that maintain omnibus panels, and we had them include a battery of questions that measure whether they have hearing problems. So example questions are, do you have trouble understanding people in a noisy room? So if you're at a party and there's a lot of people in that room, do you have a hard time understanding others? Do you have a difficult time with high-pitched voices, such as children's voices? And so there's about 5 or 6 of these questions that indicate that you have hearing problems. Another question that we included on this survey was, do you currently have a hearing aid? We mailed this out to approximately 100,000 people on the panel, and the results came back, and of those 100,000, about 5,000 of them met both criteria. So they don't have a hearing aid, and they have hearing impairment. So we used an omnibus panel to isolate a group of people in our universe. Next, we took those 5,000 and turned them into a true panel. So the first thing that we did was we sent out a questionnaire and we measured a lot of their attitudes and beliefs about hearing aids. We also measured their purchase intent, whether they intended to buy a hearing aid. This led into a series of marketing communications. Excuse me. So we were testing 3 different positionings, and we were testing different combinations of media. So direct versus television advertising versus print advertising, and various combinations. That's why we needed such a large sample. So all of those panel members then received exposure to a packet of advertisements, and they were exposed to these ads. We then followed that up with some measurements. So we measured their attitudes, measured their beliefs, measured their purchase intent. And then after about a month, we took another set of measurements of their attitudes, beliefs, and intentions. And we did this a couple times. So the point is, we took the 5,000 people who qualified from our preliminary survey and turned that into a true panel where we measured the same variables over time. And so that's a true panel. Here are some exercises that I suggest that you try, and we'll discuss these on the discussion board.